Welcome back into Off the Edge. I'm Jacob Harrison, your host. It's been a hectic 19 minutes. Wow, time is flying by because my hair is literally on fire. We got the stream fired up. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Go hang out with us there. Join us in the comments section. We are prepping up to have AJ Spur join the show right now to talk all things Alabama Crimson Tide. AJ, man, welcome into the show. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
I am doing mighty fine, Jacob. Thank you once again for having me on. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, flying a little crazy here. Not gonna lie, a lot of problems with the stream, but nonetheless, we got them sorted out. So we're settled in and we're thinking straight. Henry To'oTo'o, was thinking straight on Saturday morning. He finally announced that he is going to join the Alabama Crimson Tide as an inside linebacker after 2 stellar years with the Tennessee Vols, where he was named a freshman All-American. As a 4-star inside linebacker, he was a big target for Alabama in 2019. What do you make of this decision from Henry T and what it means for the Alabama Crimson Tide inside linebacking core?
Well, I think that this was Henry righting a wrong from over 2 years ago when he did commit to Tennessee over Alabama. When reading all about his transfer portal experience prior to him committing to Alabama recently, I noticed, his dad was very vocal about him wanting Henry to go to Alabama. He was even adamant about it in 2019 when he committed as a freshman to Tennessee. So, this was a long time coming, 2 years in the making. I think it shows how confident Henry is that he's going to play here at Alabama, and I don't think that there's any doubt that Henry's going to not only see a lot of playing time, but likely start. And I heard you right before the break, Jacob, you were talking about all these star linebackers Alabama has now, and it's difficult to think, where is he going to fit in? Who do you put on the bench for him? Obviously, you got to make some room for someone with this much star power and his abilities. But I'm excited to see where they end up putting him and how this all plays out.
I am too, and like I was saying during the first segment, I am just blown away by the depth of this defense, and I feel very confident in saying that this is the best defense in college football this year. I don't like, it's not even a fully biased thing, but I don't have to see what the rest of the country is bringing to the table. This team is absolutely stacked, especially when you look at the depth in the front seven, and you add Henry To'oTo'o in there. But when it comes to those two guys behind him, Jalen Moody, Deontay Lawson, they showed out so much as well, and all this depth just brings more firepower to Alabama. It's one more example of Nick Saban and his recruiting team being able to reload rather than rebuild.
No, entirely. And, I just said it, but I find it so hard to believe that they're going to have to put someone on the sidelines, to have Henry in there. If they could run 5 linebackers out on the defensive side of the ball, I'd say, what? Screw it, go for it. Run a 5-2 if you want. I don't care. But like you said, Jalen Moody's a star. I love Christian Harris out there. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with Chris Allen. Will Anderson's another one I'm excited to see this upcoming season. And you talk about this Alabama defense being the most dominant in the nation. I've seen people say this Alabama defense in 2021 is going to be the strongest Alabama defense that the Crimson Tide's ever had, which is going to be hard to believe, obviously, for multiple reasons. There's been some very strong defenses in the past. But on top of that, Nick Saban conceded this himself a few months back, pardon. The game is changing to be way more offensive, at least the SEC is. So with a strong SEC offensive class, how is this defense going to fare versus a defense, a decade ago where the SEC was, defensive dominant?
Well, and I think too, even with college football having this transition to your offense being so vastly important, you still have to have the defense to go out and win games. I mean, think back to the last time we met Clemson in a national championship game. Clemson had the better defense, and that's why they won the game. Like Trevor Lawrence, was standing tall, but that was because Alabama's defense wasn't great, and that was precursed throughout the entire season, where it just felt like that defense never stood on its toes. And last year with Alabama's defense, it was so mightily improved, was tops in the SEC as far as points allowed per game. But now with this team in 2021, you lose all that offensive firepower that you've stacked up over the past 2 years. 8 offensive starters are now in the NFL, and you've got Bryce Young, who, for all intents and purposes, is going to be incredible. Questions as far as the receiving core goes, but you do have John Mechie, you do have Jaleel Billingsley. It looks like Cameron Latu has really stepped up too, and you've got a strong running game. But when it comes to having that kind of defense on the other side to kind of help you out as the offense learns to grow, that's going to be a massive thing for this Crimson Tide team, especially when it's very similar situations across the board in the SEC going to new quarterbacks.
No, entirely. If you want to talk about the offense real quick, there are just as many questions on the offensive side of the ball, if not more, that I have than on the defensive side of the ball. You talk about the strong receiving class. Don't forget, Alabama did just bring in Jameson Williams from Ohio State. The running back room right now, in my opinion, is, still up in the air. Brian Robinson is the presumed starter, but, Chase McClellan's back there. Roydell Williams is back there, a name a lot of people may not know yet, but I think we'll know, very well by the end of this season. And a few more guys like Trey Sanders and Keelan Robinson, who they're also using at wide receiver. But without a doubt, defense is going to be the most important part of Alabama's game this upcoming season. After rebounding from that disappointing 2019 season where, they had to walk away with their heads hung low with a Citrus Bowl win against Michigan, they did come back with a very strong defense, at least compared to that 2019 defense. A lot of those guys that were either sophomores or true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, they got a little bit of experience, they got a little bit older, and now we're seeing a lot of those guys on defense as juniors, seniors, and so forth. I think that this season of Alabama football is going to be the most balanced on both sides of the ball. Last year, even though the defense got better, the offense, was the lethal weapon that Alabama had. This upcoming season, even though there are a lot of new faces on the offensive side of the ball, I think that they're very skilled, they're very talented, and that matched up with a experienced Alabama defense, I don't think that they can go wrong on either side of the ball here.
I'm glad you brought up Jameson Williams at the beginning of your thought there, because as far as this transfer portal thing goes, a lot of people don't necessarily like it, especially the traditionalists for college football. And college football in general is turning on its head, and a lot of traditionalists don't like it. But Alabama has already seen 2 benefits out of this just this season with Jameson Williams, who can step in. He caught a touchdown in the playoff game against Clemson. One of the most impressive throws of Fields' career. So, and then obviously Toto. And then you look back, there really hasn't been that many examples, but Landon Dickerson's one of the most popular players to ever step foot on this campus. And he didn't start here. He started at Florida State. So it can have its negatives and it can have its positives, but just from what you've seen and from your opinions out of this whole thing and the way that it looks like it can take off and really turn into a real free agency deal, what do you make of the budding rules and the budding impact of the transfer portal on college football?
Well, my whole thing is, I understand what people are saying with the free agency talk, but in the grand scheme of things, if your program is one that's going to be, good enough, that feels like a bad phrase to use here, but, there are a lot of players, and a lot of people's arguments are that players will end up transferring and utilizing that 1 free year of, you don't have to sit out when you transfer, as a way of saying, well, I'm not getting playing time here. Let me go get playing time somewhere else. And I'm going to speak on behalf of Alabama in this case. You look at some of these players that were just drafted. You look at Najee Harris, look at Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. All these guys sat underneath, other NFL stars, but they paid their dues. They waited their turn. And if there are players that are too impatient to wait their turn and get to that point and compete for a starting spot down the road, whether they're sophomores, juniors, seniors even, In the case of Brian Robinson this year, who knows what he's going to be capable of? But I don't think it's going to hurt Alabama all too much. I'm looking right now at all the players that Alabama's seen transfer out this year. You mentioned Jamison Williams, they brought in. Henry To'oTo'o, they brought in. But, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 guys this offseason have transferred from the Alabama Crimson Tide. Not too many of those names are well known from fans, and I think that that's because these players either realize I'm not going to see playing time anytime down the road, and in that case, that's fine. If your goal is to get to that next level and you don't think you're going to be able to do it at Alabama, then that's fine. But a lot of these 4 or 5-star guys, even the 3-star guys that are competitive enough to wait their turn and show out in training camp and in practice to show the coaching staff, I have what it takes to get to that next level. Maybe this year's not the year, but next year will be. I can see the negatives and I see where people are coming from, but from an Alabama point of view, I don't think that this is going to affect all too much.
And I think what oftentimes gets lost in here is the human aspect of it. Like you talk about the playing time, and oftentimes there's a lot of other personal decision making that goes into it too. Speaking of Henry To'oTo'o, it wasn't about playing time. He was a star at Tennessee. He came because of the situations there at Tennessee, and also because, as his father kind of put it, throughout that entire saga, it was about doing what was right and correcting a past mistake they felt like with the recruitment of Henry. So when it comes all down to it, there's a lot of human factors that come into it, and that's actually one of my favorite things that's going on in college football right now. Is the human factor is being recognized, and it goes even further with NIL. Mark Emmert wants to have a ruling decided on that before July 1st. And, that's one more aspect where the human aspect of college football is being taken more into consideration. And with the patience that you were talking about with the Alabama football players, it's even less about patience at that point. It's about, you can use the brand that Alabama gives you and benefit from it, even when you first get here.
Entirely. And, I'm glad you mentioned, Henry transferring to Alabama, not because of playing time, but because in the grand scheme of things, he's going to be better off having that name as an alumni, heading into the NFL. Because obviously this guy's got dreams of, getting into the NFL. And what better place to do it than first round Alabama. And you look at names that transferred from Alabama: Antonio Alfano, Tyrell Shavers, Ale Cajo, and numerous others. These are guys that had big names when they came into Alabama. They even got their shot in some cases, but just it didn't pan out. So in instances like those, I don't see an issue with players wanting to transfer. And another thing, I am tired of going online and watching people berate these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids about wanting to move somewhere else. For whatever reason it may be, don't go after these kids. There's no point in doing that.
No, I fully agree. And this, I didn't start my college career at Alabama. I had to go through a ton of ordeals to get to Alabama, and I finally get there and take advantage of the situation. It's no different with these players. They're young adults that get caught up in a lot of pomp and circumstances in their recruitment, and oftentimes they make poor decisions. We heard Devontae Smith after he got drafted, or shortly before he got drafted, when everybody was going on about his size, and even Saban hesitated to give him an offer because of his size. And Smith said even after Saban gave him an offer, he almost turned him down simply out of spite because of the size thing. Like these are emotional decisions for young human beings to make. And I know that can almost be skewed into an argument against the NIL situation, but at the end of the day, these guys, they're adults, no matter what way you paint it, and they should be able to take advantage of these situations as adults.
No, I agree completely. I don't see why, even if they are young adults, why they shouldn't be able to make their own decisions, and have other people respect it. It gets on my nerves every time recruiting classes are finalized and people end up signing elsewhere. It really does get on my nerves.
Absolutely. We're talking to AJ Spur, Roll Tide Wire. Follow him on Twitter at SpurFM. So speaking of Smitty, and this draft class, we'll get to Jalen Waddle joining your Miami Dolphins in a little bit, but I do want to talk about the guy that went undrafted, Miles Jack. He plays with Miles Jack. Miles Jack. Wow, I really butchered that. Dylan Moses went undrafted. And I think he went to a pretty good situation there with Jacksonville. He's going to play behind some great linebackers, including Miles Jack, but also Joe Schobert, and play in a versatile scheme. But also that he was able to take advantage with the insurance claim that eventually led to him staying at Alabama. But him going undrafted was a really big story on draft night, and also his landing spot. What do you make of the situation around Dylan Moses?
I think he's a case of, maybe he should have gone a little earlier. And I don't mean in the draft. I mean a full year earlier. I don't know about you, Jacob, but I remember, within my circle on Twitter, at least, everyone was shocked that he decided to come back. It was a welcome, surprise that Alabama fans heard he was coming back. Obviously, Dylan Moses, not only a strong impact player on the field, but one with great character and locker room leadership capabilities that I think, maybe weren't factored in on draft night. Obviously, those injuries took a massive hit to his draft stock. Even looking at 2021 mock drafts before the 2021 college football season, Dylan Moses was mocked mid to late first round. So I think that we need to take a step back here and think, okay, yes, his injuries probably played a role in that. However, his playing ability during his senior year, or his final season rather, wasn't all too great. He looked almost a little sluggish, a little hesitant when making tackles. He wasn't great in coverage at all. There were pieces of his game that I feel like were exposed in this final season, and that ultimately led to him being undrafted. Do I think he should have gone undrafted? No, not at all. I think, 5th, 6th, 7th round, would have been perfect for Dylan Moses. But now he's found his way into the NFL. Will he make the roster? That's the question we all have to ask right now. Obviously, Tim Tebow is going to be fighting for one of those spots. But no, I'm excited to see what Dylan Moses can do. I do think he will make the roster come time for the regular season. And, it's all a waiting game from here. There's plenty of Alabama guys that a lot of people forget about. And it's funny to think that you can be a star, when you're in college, but then go through the draft process, spend even a few months at the professional level there in the NFL, and then fans will just forget about you. The Dolphins signed Robert Foster, the wide receiver from Alabama. I don't even know if he got drafted when he came out of Alabama, but now he's a name that Dolphins fans are rediscovering. So who knows, maybe Dylan Moses might have to wait a few years before, getting that big contract where he can be a regular in the defensive rotation for the Jaguars. But no, like I said, I'm very excited to see what he's going to do, because I know he'll do something.
And you said the name. You mentioned old Timothy. Of course, it's big news when a 34-year-old former quarterback, after playing baseball for 3 years, comes back and gets into the NFL to play a completely different position that everybody thought he should have given a chance when he was in the NFL. What do you make of Tim Tebow getting back with Urban Meyer in Jacksonville?
I'm going to be honest. I don't know what to make of it. My mind still hasn't completely wrapped around that idea. It's the cause of a lot of controversy, I've noticed, whether it's, the Colin Kaepernick debate on Twitter, or, the age thing, or, maybe this means Urban Meyer's only going to be picking players he's completely comfortable with. And I'm not going to get into any of that, literally any of that. I don't think this should be cause for any controversy. I think this should be a laughing matter. I mean, we're talking about somebody here that's spent more time on the ESPN college football desk than they have in an NFL locker room over the past 9 years, So I don't think he's going to do much damage. I don't even know if he'll last the entire season in the NFL. So, I'm definitely going to be watching. I think it's smart on Jacksonville's part to get more viewers, more fans in the stands, because if Jacksonville's on, I'll probably give them a look.
And, first I got to thank you for talking about Tim Tebow, and I'm about to do it myself, but you talked about Tim Tebow's NFL career without mentioning the one playoff victory he had. So I have to thank you for that. I still relive that one in my nightmares. But staying in Florida, Tua Tagovailoa gets the weapon, right? He gets Jalen Waddle. He's the first Alabama player selected in the NFL draft with the 6th overall pick. Did that one surprise you at all?
If it wasn't for the 48 hours prior to the draft, where my feed was completely full of reports and rumors that the Dolphins wanted Waddle, I would have been absolutely shocked. However, it seemed like somebody within the Dolphin front office leaked that information, and I was ready for it. And, you know, I didn't necessarily want one wide receiver over the other. I knew that they were going to take a wide receiver. We spoke about that. I think I was on your show a day or two before, or a few days before the NFL draft, and we spoke about that. I think when it comes to the Dolphins system, Waddle's the best fit. They got Will Fuller on a 1-year deal. They still have Devontae Parker, as well as a few other wide receivers that, you know, may not even make the final roster here. But as far as what the Dolphins needed, it's Jalen Waddle. Devontae Smith would have been a nice addition for the Fins, but I don't think he would have been utilized to his fullest extent due to the other players that they have on roster. Jalen Waddle's the kind of guy that can take a, 5-yard pass, 25, 50 yards down the field and call it a day. And I think that's what Tua needs. I think he's got the deep threats with Parker and Fuller. I think he needed, somebody that can extend plays like Waddle can.
Yeah, that was my immediate impression was you get the guy that can score from anywhere on the field at any given moment. You open up the offense with those jet sweeps and pop passes and those sorts of things, drag routes that can break open, and it really helps Tua out. But you get the offensive tackle, Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame. Myles Gaskins appears to be the running back. Have the Dolphins done enough offensively now to give Tua Tagovailoa an opportunity to actually impress the NFL enough to a point that he's a respected starting quarterback in this league now?
Have they? I would like to think so. And I read something today, actually, that said Brian Flores kind of slipped up and exposed to the world that the Dolphins are officially done with their rebuild. So, it's win now or never.
Oh.
And they apparently think that they have given Tua enough weapons to succeed. The running back room, like you said, Myles Gaskin is probably going to be RB1. They still have Salvon Ahmed, who is RB2, but will likely work in there as a committee with Gaskin. And they drafted Jared Dokes, the running back out of Cincinnati in the 7th round, who I think, to everyone else's chagrin, is going to actually be a solid role player for the Dolphins this season. But besides that running back room where there's still a lot of question marks, I think the rest of this offense is set to where if the Dolphins don't succeed and if Tua doesn't look good, there's no more pointing fingers. I can no longer go on Twitter and, Jacob, I want you to hold me to this. I can no longer go online and say, well, it's X, Y, and Z.
Right.
I think it's now or never for Tua to prove himself.
That's wild because, he's just a second-year player with 9 starts under his belt, but he does have pieces around him now. The excuses are gone. Talking to AJ Spur, Roll Tide Wire at Spur FM. Just a few more questions for you, AJ. And we're in a stage of life now. We live in an era where we're going to have Mac Jones versus Tua Tagovailoa, I guess as long as Tua survives in Miami. But we're going to have that 2 times a year. Mac Jones went to the hated Patriots up in New England. He's still got to beat out Cam Newton. That remains to be seen. There's still a bit of rebuilding they need to do on that offense. But what do you make of the fit with Mac Jones to New England, which was, supposed to be what was going to happen all along?
Well, I think that, heading into the season, Cam Newton, no doubt, the starter for the New England Patriots. But I think everyone has to remember, Newton's on a 1-year deal, and the Patriots were looking elsewhere for quarterbacks. It almost seems like Newton was their, last choice, and he just so happened to still be available for them to come and scoop up. So with that being said, I think Mac Jones does see a decent amount of time on the field. We may see Mac Jones used in the exact same role that he was in 2019 with Tua as the starter and Jalen Hurts gone. Maybe if the Patriots are down a lot late in the second half, they'll throw Mac Jones in, just get him some help. Maybe if they're up by a lot late in the second half, throw Mac Jones in, get him some experience. But long term here, I do think Mac Jones is the guy that they want. And I say they, not Bill Belichick, for a reason. And this is one of my weird takes. And, I know Tommy Paradise back there. You can feel free to use the dump button if you want on me here with this one. But I'm predicting Bill Belichick is, getting close to being on his way out. He's got the front door in his sights. And Mac Jones, if he succeeds, boom, Bill Belichick is, finishing a winner, whether it be a Super Bowl win or not. He's got a good quarterback leaving the Patriots in good hands. If it's a bad experience between Jones and the Patriots, then you know what, Bill Belichick, he's lost his touch and, maybe time to hang up the old vest. But I think Mac Jones is their guy, and I think that he's going to be there when the next head coach of the New England Patriots is there.
I didn't catch a hint of wishful thinking in that take, did I, AJ? When it comes to Belichick,
you may have brought out the AFC East, Patriot hatred within me on that one. So forgive me if that side of me came out.
It's all good. It's all good. At Spur FM on the Twitter account, be sure to go and give him that well-deserved follow. AJ, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you so much for giving me a platform to say that. I've been waiting all day for that.
Absolutely. Take it easy, man. Until next time.
Of course. See you later.
AJ Spur hanging out with us and dropping the fiery take that Bill Belichick's on his way out. He may have a point. He's got sound reasoning and logic behind it, so I don't hate it. I don't know about it. You know what I mean? We'll take our break. We'll mash them together, close out the hour, get ready for Tyler Martin on the other side. Stick with us here on Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. Hello there. Welcome back into Off the Edge. Going to close her down for the first hour. Appreciate AJ Spur hopping on with us. Always an incredible discussion with AJ. He's such a dude, man. And he brings it every single time. Incredible insight, great mind for the game of football. Always appreciate his contributions to the show. Hey, you can always contribute to the show as well. If you're watching on a live stream, you can always join us in the comment section of whichever program, surface, content, whatever you want to call it. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. That's where we're hanging out. That's where we're streaming at. And you can always join us in the comments section. Drop some questions, any thoughts, reactions. We would love to have it. You can always call into the show as well. 205-342-9904. That's the number to call to bring your opinions to the airwaves, to have them heard. Something, every day we have to write an article as employees here at Tide 100.9. I think getting into the digital scene is such a brilliant idea. I'm so glad we do it. It gives me an outlet to, explore my creativity in every single facet that I can imagine. I produce, I get on here on Off the Edge and just shout my manic takes to the void. But I also get to write and I also get to learn. And one of my favorite things to do is to learn about the topic as I'm writing it. I'm not a historian of the game at all. So oftentimes, I say it all. I do know my history a little bit, but I do have to Google, which exact years sometimes those older national championships Alabama has. But when it comes to John Mitchell, I didn't understand just how incredible his story was, and I got to write about him being inducted into the National Junior College Athletic Association Hall of Fame, the inaugural class for the NJCAA's Hall of Fame, and I'm sure many people listening know who John Mitchell is. Alongside Wilbur Jackson, he was one of the very first black athletes at Alabama, the first black football player at Alabama, and he became the first black full-time coach at Alabama as well. After 2 years at Eastern Arizona, where he was a two-time All-American, he came to Tuscaloosa after growing up a Mobile native, dreaming of playing for the Crimson Tide in an era where it just did not seem at all plausible. And he was able to turn that into a reality. When Paul Bear Bryant was working with USC and John McKay to try to, get Alabama to be an integrated program, a chance golf match changed John Mitchell's life forever. And, even as big of a Steelers fan as I am, I did not know the man was the assistant head coach for the Steelers. I did not know he had held that position since 2007. I did not know that he has been with my favorite team for as long as I've been alive. He joined the Steelers in 1994 and has not looked back. He's been with the organization ever since. Head on over to Tide109.com and check out my article on that. Give it a read. Be sure to click the links inside to kind of branch out and get the full story as well from the sources with the Steelers.com and a few older articles that I linked in there as well, just to get the full scope of what John Mitchell accomplished here in Tuscaloosa. Is just an incredible story. He's incredibly deserving of being in the NJCAA Hall of Fame inaugural class, alongside the likes of Night Train Lane. Excuse me, Dick Night Train Lane. An incredible class for the NJCAA. And it's topped off with John Mitchell, if you ask me. Just an incredible career, incredible person overall, too. You can always check out all of our content, Tide109.com. You can check out Devontae Smith having a football camp, Eric Andrews getting back in the cage, all sorts of things going on there as well. Tide109.com. As we prepare to dive into the second hour and we get ready to talk with Tyler Martin on the other side, we're going to dive into more of transfer portal talk, get Tyler's thoughts on the NIL, maybe catch up on a little bit of recruiting as well. Tyler Martin does it all for Bama Central. He's one of the best. We enjoy having him on the show all the time as well. So be sure to stick around for us. At 8:15, Tyler will join the show. Want to encourage you, go find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube at Off the Edge 109. Give us a follow, like, share, subscribe. Do what you got to do to stay connected with the show every Monday and Friday from 7 to 9. We'll be right here with you to bring the latest analysis on all things Crimson Tide, as well as the latest news in the world of sports. I'm Jacob Harrison. This is Off the Edge. Tommy, if we're ready to go, we'll send it to the second hour and prepare for Tyler Martin at 8:15. This is Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports.
WTUG HD2 Northport and W265CG Tuscaloosa. A Town Square media station.
One man to beat, you can forget about it. Touchdown, Alabama.
Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app. The pressure is on. Lights out. This is Off the Edge on Tide 100.9.
Quarterback back at the 5, steps up, gets drilled. Yes, sir, he gets mashed. And that is going to be the ball game. Alabama wins the ball game.
Streaming live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the Tide 100.9 app. Go! Here is your host of Off the Edge, Jacob Harrison. Let's go.
Hey there, welcome back into Off the Edge. The second hour is live here on Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports, streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well at Off the Edge 109. Go give us a like, share, follow, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Help us out and stick around. Join us in the comment sections or give us a call, 205-342-9904. You can also listen to the show on the Tide 100.9 app anywhere in the world. Just go into that old App Store or Google Play Store, download or search for Tide 100.9. Hit that download button and take Crimson Tide content with you wherever you go, whether it be online, streaming through all of our programming. Every single day we're on from about 6 to 9 almost every single day now. So you can always take all of our on-air content with you, as well as the Tide109.com written content. And that's also where you can find the show as well if you don't want to download the app, which you should, because it's your best friend as an Alabama Crimson Tide fan. You will get updates, alerts, everything you need to know as a Crimson Tide fan with excellent analysis, up-to-date information, and so much more. Be sure to check out the Tide 100.9 app. Also got to remind you, Alabama Vintage, AlabamaVTG.com. Charlie has brought one of the best ideas to Tuscaloosa you could ever ask for, and you didn't even know you wanted it. That is vintage Alabama Crimson Tide apparel at a reasonable price. AlabamaVTG.com. Go check out their online store. Ships to you wherever you are. Find them on Instagram. Check out the sales. Get a first peek at what's going on in stock. That stock is constantly turning over. Charlie's constantly having to bring in new items as things are flying off the shelf. And go check them out, 2210 University Boulevard. Go give them a look-see inside the store. You will see countless items that you will want to add to your Crimson Tide collection as a fan, whether it's on your person or in your home. Charlie's got something for you at Alabama Vintage, 2210 University Boulevard, under the Crimson awning, across from City Hall in the heart of downtown Tuscaloosa. Go check them out. Find you that vintage t-shirt, that vintage sweater, starter jacket, snapback hat, whatever you need to fill out your Crimson Tide fandom. Charlie's going to hook you up. Alabama Vintage, AlabamaVTG.com. So we've discussed how throughout the day, really, this is my third hour on radio on a Monday. We're here, right? But throughout the day, we've talked about
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Everybody comes to me for all their problems, right? We got to let the Iron Man sleep every once in a while. No, I'm joking. But when it comes to the transfer portal, Henry To'oTo'o, of course it's nothing but a positive for Alabama. Everybody all of a sudden gets worried about the little guys when it comes to these big changes in college football. We don't worry about the little guys until we talk about expanding playoffs. We don't worry about the little guys until we start talking about how the transfer portal can hurt the little guys. You're at, ULM, and you finally get this you find a diamond in the rough running back, and he transfers up to Tennessee, and look out, he's a first round prospect now. That's pure hypothetical. It's not like you're going to first round running back out of Tennessee. But nonetheless, that's when people think about it. Oh, they're going to lose their star players. Then it comes to the NIL. They're going to lose out in recruiting. All these big schools are going to be able to take advantage of the situation. Guys, have we been watching the same sport for the past 20 years? How about for the past 15, where it's or the past 12, 13, where Alabama has been unstoppable in every respect, where Alabama has been featured prominently in every postseason since 2009? Are we watching the same sport? How about with Ohio State and Clemson, LSU? It's the same schools. It's Oklahoma, Florida, Georgia. It's the same schools all the time. Every now and then, Oregon will peek in there a little bit. Same schools every year. It's been that way for a long time now. And yet we still find joy in this sport. But you're kidding yourself if you think the NCAA or anybody is going to do anything to this sport to damage it beyond repair. Saturday morning showdown, 8 to 11 a.m. on Saturdays, by the way. All of the nightly hosts get together and we just shout at each other with great debate and great takes. Bryant Horn brought up an excellent point. None of this is going to stop anybody from watching college football. None of this is going to stop anybody from tuning in on Saturdays because it matters. It's always mattered. We as Alabama fans are going to watch Alabama host Mercer this year, kill them 63-4, and go on about our day. And we're going to enjoy it. We're going to tailgate. We're going to do all the things, not just because we're coming back from a COVID year where we couldn't, congregate as we like to do on a Saturday in Tuscaloosa. No, because that's what we do as Alabama fans. Nothing stands in the way of that. Not the opponent, not the quality of the competition, none of that. Do you get up a little bit more when Georgia comes to town? Absolutely. Do you get up a little bit more when LSU, Auburn, those kinds of teams, they come in, they're top 10 ranked, they come to town, you get up a little bit more, right? Tuscaloosa is just a bit more full, right? Of course. But nothing's stopping you from turning on the TV. Because the fact of the matter is that all of us are fans of the idea of what the Crimson Tide are, right? We fall in love with the players because of their stories and the things of that nature. And that's fair. I have my favorite Alabama players, as does everyone. But we fall in love with those players and their stories because we're connected because of the same idea of what the Crimson Tide is. And that's perfectly reasonable. That's the nature of what it is. And what the NCAA can't do is destroy the idea of what the Alabama Crimson Tide is. They can't destroy the idea of what the LSU Tigers are. They can't destroy the idea of what the Ohio State Buckeyes are, the Oklahoma Sooners. You name the program, they can't destroy what the thought is behind the fandom and the program of what that idea is. They can't do it. The only way they can do it is when you've got an SMU or a Penn State situation on your hands. So maybe they can do it to LSU. I don't know. But they're not willing to do that. That's why every school hasn't gotten in trouble for the past 10 years. That's why only the most ridiculous examples, like Ole Miss coming out of absolutely nowhere, beating Alabama 2 years in a row, that's when a team gets in trouble, is when they rise from the ashes inexplicably, and there's reason to get onto them. Why do you think LSU basketball is still hanging around? Why do you think Wade's still at LSU? Why do you think Auburn gets away with everything they get away with, even though it's so open? It's because the NCAA doesn't want to destroy it. The NCAA doesn't want to destroy the money bags that it has. Can you imagine if the NCAA shut down Auburn, what it would do monetarily for them with the SEC on CBS? People would still tune in, but when the competition starts to go down after 2 or 3 years, fewer and fewer people turn it. That's the only thing the NCAA can do to destroy what it's built over the past 150 years. They're not willing to do that. They don't want to do that. And they can't do that. So when it comes to introducing these new transfer portal rules, when it comes to introducing the name, image, and likeness rules, when it comes to eventually, in the very near future, expanding the playoffs, all of these things are done in an effort not just to shut up the kids, not just to shut up the radio host. It's all in an effort to improve the game or to sustain the game, to move the game forward. I don't know if you guys have ever heard Mark Emmert talk. He is a stubborn SOB, respectfully. You've got to be at that level in life, right? to command the NCAA and to manage over student athletes, college athletes, amateur athletes. But I ask, at what point are you no longer an amateur athlete when you're raking in this kind of money for other people? At the end of the day, these are human beings. And that was one of the things that I appreciated AJ talking about. They're human beings. They own the right to their name, image, and likeness. They own that. You can't, obviously you can, but it is highly unethical to just strip that away for the sake of amateurism when hundreds of people are raking in millions and millions of dollars off the backs of these players. And sometimes things don't work out. When you look at what happened to Dylan Moses, yes, he was prepared. He was still able to take out an insurance policy on himself and thank your maker that that's even a possibility for him as a college athlete, to be able to take out an insurance policy on himself in the case of a situation like that. Because that's wild. A guy that just months before he said that he was coming back to Tuscaloosa was still considered a mid to late first round draft pick, coming off an ACL. He comes back for his senior year, takes out an insurance policy on himself, and goes undrafted. Unspeakable. It's one more in the long example of these guys should be able to contend for themselves, take care of themselves, and have a brand for themselves and be able to manage it themselves with the assistance of their university, which is something I love so much about the advantage here at Alabama that was introduced late last week. Between Greg Byrne and Nick Saban and the entire athletics staff here at Alabama, they've come together to bring something that can help these athletes take advantage of the situation that lay before them. And the situation should lay before them. They should be granted these opportunities. And that's not just my opinion. That's a humane fact. This is America, where it's a capitalist society, for better or for worse. So we don't get to cry about these players as humans, as adults, taking advantage of the brand that they have built for themselves since they were 14 years old. Dylan Moses has been a superstar since he was 13, guys. He was on the ESPN magazine cover at 15 years old. And he wasn't able to profit from it until after he was undrafted. After injuries, things that he can't control, derailed his career. And yet he was still able to perform at a high level, but yet he was unable to be compensated monetarily for it. All that to say, earning a scholarship matters. Getting your education matters. There are very few and far between people that are able to just maneuver circumstances to get to the job that they want without a degree. I praise those people. That's brilliant work. It saves you a lot of money. But at the same time, I am not jealous of the fact that I have tens of thousands of dollars in student debt and Dylan Moses doesn't. You know what I'm saying? I'm not jealous of the fact that I had to scrape by for 8 years as a father and figure all of my college life, because that's my circumstance, right? That's my story. That's the things that I had to go through. And for these football players, they're still human beings. Even though they're on the field for our entertainment, they're also on the field for their sake, for what they want to do, for what they love to do, what they want to make a future out of, or what they want to use to help build them as a human, as a person, as a citizen of the country, whatever. Because there's thousands of reasons to play college football. Think of the guys that are walk-ons, that know they're walk-ons, that know they'll never earn a scholarship. Not all of them are out there just to say that they were on the Alabama football team. Some of them are out there to get into coaching. Some of them are out there, just to further their mindset. Some of them are out there to learn how to be a leader, to take examples from people that can do things that they can't athletically achieve themselves. There's reasons behind all of these different things. And we have to think deeper than, I don't know how it's going to work out. We have to challenge ourselves to see beyond the hurdles of these new incoming ideas in college football and understand how to put them in place without damaging the sport, because you can damage the sport. Don't get me wrong. You can't just throw NIL out into the college football world and just say, have at it. It won't work that way. There's got to be rules in place, and there will be rules in place. But until those rules are set in place and we see this thing act out, we can't freak out about it. We got to hope that it works correctly. It's the same thing with the college football playoff. The college football playoff didn't ruin football. The college football playoff didn't deter anything. Has it given us blowouts in postseason play? Yes, there's blowouts in every postseason. Every one of them. I dare you to go find an NFL playoff and a Major League Baseball playoff, an NBA playoff, and go find me a situation where there wasn't a blowout or there wasn't a series sweep. I dare you. You can't do it. It happens. And it's going to happen in college football because of the disparity in the playing levels. But you still go into it with an open mind. And we see after a few years that maybe it's not going to work this way, because we're still leaving out deserving teams and we're still not leaving an open table for everybody. That's why expansion's on the horizon, why it's going to happen. We just have to open our minds and be prepared for what's coming and then analyze it once we've seen what it is and decide whether it's working or not. Not immediately dismiss it. That's closed-minded. It's ignorant, and it doesn't work. We'll take our break. We'll come back and speak with Tyler Martin on that subject and so much more. Bama Central beat writer Tyler Martin joins Off the Edge with Jacob Harrison right here on Tide 100.9 right after this. Tell you what, I just saw a video clip of Tim Tebow throwing a jump pass at Florida. Can't wait for him to do that. Throw a jump pass to Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. I think that'll work out perfectly, just beautifully. We need to see it. It's got to happen. He's got to make the team, right? I mean, come on. Why else would he go? Why else would you drag this out? Let it happen. Give the people what they want. Tim Tebow in a Jaguars uniform, 2021. I can't do it. I can't. Bama Central's Tyler Martin joins the show right now. Tyler, what's going on, my man?
What's up, Jacob? I'm glad to be back on your show, man. It's been a minute. I think last time I was on here was during basketball season, but I'm glad to be back. And, Off the Edge, it's such a fitting name. I was thinking about something yesterday, to be honest, like, Henry To'oTo'o, Chris Allen, Will Anderson, Christian Harris. What school? You're probably going to ask me this. It's like, what school has a better linebacking core in the country than that? And it's like your show's name is so fitting, Off the Edge.
No, I appreciate the recognition there. And listen, I'm a Will Anderson simp over here, right? Like the way he played football last year, insane. But that's the position I love to watch so much, is those edge rushers, and it's fitting because going into last year I was so stressed out because between Chris Allen and Ben Davis there was only 1.5 sacks for Alabama, and now we come in to 2021. Chris Allen and Will Anderson are just ready to wreak havoc on the entire SEC and these young quarterbacks.
No doubt about it, no doubt. And I mean, it's just, I feel bad for opposing tackles on the offensive lines that are going to have to deal with this. And if you think about it, Jacob, you go look at Alabama's schedule. I was trying to do this the other day. It's like, I really need to do it more in depth and more research on this, but it's like, I want to know what tackles are coming back for each and every team, because those guys are going to have their hands full every single day. I don't really think there's going to be that big of an experienced offensive line in the SEC, because last year, Alabama, Texas A&M had the two most experienced ones. They're now depleted, right? But around the league, I mean, offensive line, they're going to have a trouble keeping Will Anderson and Chris Allen in front of them too. And then when you got Chris Allen now, and you got Christian Harris, Henry To'oTo'o, Jalen Moody. I mean, the depth that a lot of people were kind of questioning about an inside linebacker, that's not an issue anymore, right? This defense is going to be something special, and I think it could be how good the 2020 offense was. I think we are going to be talking about the 2020 defense being in that kind of category.
Yeah, when we were talking to AJ, it was kind of the same topic. As far as offensive tackles go, I did catch a glimpse. I want to say it was a Mississippi State left tackle was getting some top 10 praise in Todd McShay's way too early mock draft, but it's way too early for a reason. Kids still got to play against Will Anderson, so we'll see who's. Yeah,
I wonder where Evan Neal is in that. Obviously, I know Evan Neal's probably OT number 1 in 2022. I'd be curious to know where he's at in McShay's top 10 as well, if he has the Mississippi State kid above him.
He did. There was 2 offensive tackles that went ahead again, ahead of Neal, but it had more to do with the fact that Neal hadn't played left tackle yet. So once we see Neal as the left tackle, for a full season, no doubt, if he's half as good at those as he at left tackle as he was at right guard and right tackle, he's going to blow this thing out of the water, be OT number 1 without a doubt.
Oh, no question, man. And two, I think Alabama, this year, the offensive line especially, something I'm really excited about whenever they get back on campus and it's ready for fall camp, when that gets back up in August, is just seeing really, how this offensive line gels and how do they plug in the holes, right? I'm really curious to see if Chris Owens stays at center, or does he kick back out to tackle? Do they like Darian Dalcourt at center? He obviously missed the A-Day game. He was one of the 24 guys out, but I think how good the defense is, and then how does the offensive line mature and develop. Those are probably the 2 biggest things I'm really intrigued about this offseason.
Yeah, and I tell you, I'm in love with this defense. After just a short while, maybe an hour or so after Henry To'oTo'o announced that he'd be coming to Alabama, I got on the Twitter machine and spewed out a take, and I stand by it. I think this is the best defense in all of college football this year that we're getting ready to see, and I think it's going to help out that offense a whole lot. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're on target to be that. I think they've got a lot of experience coming back. They already had, like 8 starters, 9 starters coming back. It's either 8 or 9, and then you add in an experienced player like Henry To'oTo'o. And real quick, I told this on the radio up in Huntsville this morning. Let's not go ahead and pencil him in to start alongside Christian Harris, because, and I'm sure we'll get into the transfer rule, things like that. Nothing is given, everything is earned. I want to be very, very clear about that. And Nick Saban never just gives out anything, right? I think Jalen Moody will still obviously have a chance, and he should be number 2 on the depth chart right now, above Henry To'oTo'o entering fall camp. And Henry, depending on what happens with the interconference transfer rule, but the assumption is that that's going to pass. I think To'oTo'o is going to be kind of behind the 8 ball to start out with, right? And fans need to be aware of that, right? I mean, he's super talented. He's going to be an NFL draft pick. I mean, he's very the talent's there, but he's got to come in and earn his stripes like he did at Tennessee, right? And Jalen Moody, he's a senior now. He's been there. He's seen everything for 3.5 years now. So, Henry To'oTo'o is going to have to earn it. Let's be very, very clear about that. And then, too, you look at the landscape of college football right now, Jacob. Look at the defenses, right? Georgia, over the last 2 years, had really staked their claim as being the best defense in the country. Right there, they were number 2 in total defense behind Alabama last year. But they lost so much on that defensive, and especially in the defensive backfield. I mean, I think they had 6 defensive backs drafted. they've got to plug in some holes really, really quickly, and I don't think they're going to be that strong. Ohio State will probably take some step backs as well. They had some guys leave and go to the draft. So Alabama's the crown for number one defense in the country is definitely there for the taking.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with you on Toto. There's nothing in stone yet. I think that his deciding to make his announcement public may indicate a few things about what the transfer rule is going to be. You don't know, who knows how much inside information he might have on that situation, considering it ties so closely into his decision. But regardless, when he does get here, he's going to have to fight with two guys who, very well could have won 8A MVP. I loved what I saw out of Deontay Lawson and out of Jalen Moody on A-Day. I mean, they were very much assisted by the fact of the depth around them on that defense, but they were also missing three of the best players on the defense as well. And Chris Allen didn't play the whole game, but Will Anderson, Christian Harris, and Malachi Moore were not on that Crimson defense with him, and it really didn't skip a beat with those two guys at inside linebacker. We got to feel pretty good about that depth.
Yeah, Deontay Lawson, he is going to be a very, 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 very special player. And, I remember last year when Alabama got him, it was the day after Christmas in 2019. He commits to Alabama. Everybody go nuts. It's the best in-state player, right? And he was the only one player in the recruiting class until about April, right? Everybody was freaking out. But guess what? Deontay Lawson held his ground. He was that one commitment until Alabama really got the ball rolling on what could arguably be the greatest recruiting class of all time. We don't know that yet, obviously. But if you go back look at the numbers and the recruiting rankings, it's up there. But he is going to be, and I said this on plenty of shows and plenty of podcasts, I think Deontay Lawson is really going to be maybe even the crown jewel of that recruiting class when it's all said and done. I really do believe he's a special talent. Him, along with Quincy McKinstry and the defensive backfield. I mean, we saw both. I mean, how are you going to be able to keep them off the field, right? I mean, the talent is it's oozing out of them, right? And I just think their ball skills are really, really great. And Deontay Lawson, it's like he's like a heat-seeking missile. Wherever the ball is on the field, he's going to hit you hard. I mean, the dude can lay the lumber for sure. And he's just going to be too hard to keep off the field, I think, in the long haul. And Alabama, they're just very fortunate to have players like him, of course. And he's going to be, he's going to see some playing time this season as well. And they've got some other linebackers who are really young. I think of Demoy Kennedy, another in-state guy who was in that 2020 class. He was at A-Day. They're so loaded, man. It's in Alabama. I mean, we obviously call them, position U at so many different positions, and they're certainly linebacker U. But yeah, we got to feel good about that. Got to feel good about the trajectory of everything. But Henry To'oTo'o, just kind of look at what he did for Tennessee. He was asked to do a lot early on in his career with Tennessee. I mean, as a freshman, he was asked to really lead that defense under Jeremy Pruitt. And one thing it also got me thinking about the transfer rule, Jacob, is when you miss on guys in high school, the transfer rule is going to allow you to get a second crack at them, right? Because when you go look at his recruitment coming out of California, coming out of Sacramento, this was one or two of the very few wins Jeremy Pruitt got over Nick Saban on the recruiting trail. Maybe the only one, actually. But, Jeremy gets his win, Henry To'oTo'o coming out of high school. But then, once you have a sinking ship like Tennessee, he opens back up. Those relationships that were built, they were too hard to pass up. And I know Ohio State was really running second to Alabama in this entire race. But it's fitting that the two teams that were in the college football playoff were the two teams trying to get the best transfer on the market. But, yeah, I think, too, the transfer rule is going to help guys who already have those connections from high school get more and more to the blue blood programs.
Absolutely agree. We're talking to Tyler Martin at Steven Tyler _15 on the Twitter account. Bama Central beat writer, covers a plethora of sports. And before we get too deeply into the transfer portal discussion, I do want to get into that very quickly. But you brought up a name, and you followed it up with, how do you keep this guy off the field? And I can't help but agree. But at the same time, Jalen Armour Davis held his own in the A-Day too, and I loved what I saw out of Kool-Aid McKinstry as well. But I keep talking about the depth on the front seven. That has a lot to do with the fact that those guys rotate a lot. The depth on the back end is very fitting too. I thought they looked incredible. There was a few shaky spots, but overall, you have to feel good about what's going on in the depth, especially with Kool-Aid McKinstry being as versatile as he is.
No doubt about it. I loved what I saw from Jalen Armour Davis, and everything that I was told leading up to A-Day is like, this is the guy who has played extremely, extremely well throughout spring. He really rose to the top. And another name that we haven't even talked because he's not even on campus yet is Kyrie Jackson, the transfer coming in from East Mississippi Community College. He's 6'3". He's listed at 6'3", but he's arguably the tallest corner Nick Saban's ever had the chance to coach. And you can look at this, Jacob. Alabama just had 2 defensive backs hit the portal. What does that tell you, right?
Right.
In Ronald Williams and Brandon Turnage, that tells me right there that Kool-Aid has already passed them. Jalen Armour Davis probably has that other boundary corner spot probably already locked down. But when Kyrie Jackson's coming in there, I'm telling you, he's going to be another impact guy, I think. But, also, too, depending on if they're in nickel, if they're in dime, more teams are kind of offensively going to kind of maybe throw different sets at them. Mississippi State did it a lot, where Alabama's going to have that fifth defensive back in the game. But it's going to be interesting to see, what kind of different packages they throw out there and who's on who. But I think this, like I said, hey, last year coming into it, we knew the offense was going to be a strength, right? The questions were on defense. This year, the roles have been reversed, and I think we're going to get back to, hey, Alabama's going to be giving up in the range of 14 to 15 points rather than 18, 19, 20.
And that's still remarkable. That would be even more remarkable after a year where 19 points allowed per game was good enough to be best in the SEC. This defense is so stacked, and I can't wait to watch it, especially after all these years of complaints about Pete Golding. I think he has been given the opportunity to really build this defense in his image with the assistance of Nick Saban's recruiting power. And we'll get into that a little bit later, too. I know you're very well connected in the recruiting scene. But as far as this transfer portal goes, it does give you guys that are in the recruiting scene one more aspect to look at. So far, Alabama has really only benefited from this. The guys that, a lot of guys have gotten in the transfer portal, but a lot of those guys would not have seen much playing time outside of special teams anyway. And they get to go on to opportunities where they can thrive. And we've seen plenty of Alabama guys take advantage of that in the past. Alabama generally doesn't bring in a lot. Getting 2 in one offseason feels like it's matching the same number that Nick Saban's probably gotten what feels like over his entire career. Of course, Carl Tucker last year, but also the most notable, Landon Dickerson, one of the most famous players to ever walk through the campus of Alabama. But how do you see the way that this is kind of shaping up? I know that the SEC rules haven't been put in place permanently yet, but as far as the way that this transfer portal is kind of evolving, we've seen this year shake up just a little bit more than years past, with the expectations of the rules opening up even more across all conferences. How do you feel like we've seen from the budding start of this impact college football, whether for better or for worse?
It's going to be just like college basketball has been the last recent years, Jacob. College. You look at just Nate Oates, for example, and what he's built at Alabama. A lot of the guys, even in his current recruiting class, even what he did at Buffalo, he built it through a lot of transfers, and that's what college football is going to look like. It's because I know. I'm relating this to basketball because when March Madness ended, Final Four ended, Baylor was crowned champions. I think over 100 names hit the portal right when the season ended. Like, we're going to see something similar to that at the end of this college football season, because once everybody can do it one time, and once some adversity hits, they're going to do it. And I'm not trying to say they're quitting or anything like that. I think different situations call for different things, and sometimes you need a fresh start. There's no doubt about that. But we're going to see, it's going to be like free agency, right? And it's also, too, another thing is, like, I'm pretty objective when it comes to this. I'm pretty neutral. And then I'm looking at it from the standpoint, if you're an Alabama fan, you obviously love the portal. Or if you're a Clemson fan, if you're an Ohio State fan, or if you're a big name program, Georgia, LSU, whoever, you love it. And then I feel so bad for maybe the middle tier to lower tier Power 5 and the Group of 5 schools, because they're just going to get crapped on in this, right? That's entirely what this rule is going to do. So another thing is, it kind of ties into this, Jacob, is last week I know everybody was talking about playoff expansion, right? 8 of the 12 people in the committee want expansion. Well, guess what? This transfer rule is really going to show you that there's going to be 4 or 5 teams who really deserve to compete for a title every single year, not 8. That's just the way it's going to go, because, but you take Henry To'oTo'o, for example, he saw what two years of, leadership was at Tennessee. There was ineptitude, right? They were barely 500, couldn't go they went to 1 bowl game. They barely beat Indiana, had to come back from 3 touchdowns in that game in the fourth quarter. He saw that, and guess what? He wants to win a championship. So what's he going to do? Okay, my final 2 schools, Alabama, Ohio State. that's just what we're in for, right? The rich is going to get richer, and I think if you're just a neutral college football fan, you should hate this rule, honestly, because it's going to deteriorate the health of the sport overall. I really do believe that. But then again, you look at it, it's like, hey man, like if it's in place and it's a rule, why not use it to your advantage, right? And that's exactly what Nick Saban's doing. I call Nick Saban the great adapter. And I really started saying that after COVID because he dominated the virtual recruiting scene. It's like, boom, he's at home. He's doing 4 recruiting visits right there in his own home, and he's getting, 7 5-stars in one class, right? He's dominating. He's adapting. He did it with offenses. He did it when he hired Lane Kiffin in 2014. He said, you know what? We can't just be run, pass, play action. We can't do that anymore. They evolve. He evolves. He adapts. He's going to use this to an advantage, and he's already kicking people's butts on the recruiting trail. Now he's doing it in the transfer market. Whatever other rule they're going to put into place, he's going to beat you in that too. I mean, this is what this man does, right? And I just think, this is going to benefit the big programs. But I think overall, I do think it's bad for the health of the sport.
I'm certainly going to have to think about that one because I don't think I fully agree because I look at Cincinnati, their top running back is Jerome Ford, a guy that got squeezed out of Alabama. And I look at Alabama losing so many pieces. I wonder if maybe it doesn't police itself because, Alabama can hoard all the top talent, but they can't hold on to all the talent. They've got to release, guys in order to fit these other ones in. So I wonder if those smaller programs don't, whereas they do have to give up some big pieces, if they can take advantage of taking in the leftovers of the big teams and then build upon that, similar to what kind of Cincinnati has done in relation to with Jerome Ford and some other pieces. They might be able to build themselves up into a situation like Cincinnati has, don't you think?
No, you make a valid point, Jacob, and I guess really what I'm trying to tie it into is, okay, did Cincinnati deserve a chance to compete for a national title? I think that's really what I'm getting at is that
right.
I think overall what this lessons is this cuts the list in half of teams who could actually win a title, right? Like, okay, we saw Cincinnati in their bowl game in the Peach Bowl against Georgia. They should have won that game, right? I mean, if they didn't make a dumb decision on third down, the bad play calling, Luke Fickell should probably beat Georgia. He should probably 1-0 against Kirby Smart, right?
Right.
We probably agree on that.
Absolutely.
The reality is though, that Georgia, they obviously had a lot of people out. I'm not using that as an excuse. They were obviously going against some second teamers. Georgia had a lot of opt out, but do we really think if Cincinnati was at 8 teams, they were if they had all Power 5 conference champions gets in and there's 3 wild cards. If Cincinnati was at 8 teams, they're playing against Alabama. Do we think they deserve to be on the same field? And so maybe it doesn't deteriorate the group of 5 altogether in the lower Power 5 schools. Maybe it just deteriorates their chance at winning a title because it's cool. You can go 11-1 in the American. You can win an American Athletic Conference championship. You can go to the Fiesta Bowl and be the highest ranked group of 5 team and beat a Florida team with a lot of opt outs. You can do that. I just think at the end of the day, if that's the goal. I don't know if the transfer rule is really beneficial because at the end of the day, everybody wants to win a title, right?
Right.
And so I just think I think more so maybe not hurts them. I think it just hurts their chances at winning a title in that sense.
It's certainly an interesting perspective. I'm not outright disagreeing with you at all. I think it's got the wheels turning in my head to try to figure out which ways I can try to take what you're saying and apply it to my thoughts on it and try to improve my logic behind it. I think at the end of the day, a lot of these are going to be able to police themselves and balance itself out over time. But it is one of those things where we're going to have to wait and see.
I think so too, right? I think, and I'm going to use this as an example. I think you look at the guys, for example, who have already benefited from the transfer coming in as JUCO guys. Like I think of Second Chance U, right? I think of guys like that who went to big name schools and really impacted, right? If you get some of those guys, because there's going to be talented players who might need a second chance, who might have gotten some trouble, who are going to benefit the transfer rule. I think that's a big pro of the transfer rule, right? So I think some guys are really going to benefit from that. And maybe there's one team that just gets super hot. They build a really good, strong team around an underrated quarterback, a guy, maybe like a Malik Willis from Liberty, right? He's a guy who transferred out of Auburn, didn't beat out Bo Nix. Met up with Hugh Freeze, and they built something right there in Lynchburg, and he's going to be a guy who his name probably rises in the 2020 draft boards. But I think of guys like that. I think of guys who maybe just needed a second chance, right? So I do think there's going to be some guys maybe rise from the ashes because of this transfer rule. But I think overall, I mean, I did a story on Bama Central about this just a couple of days ago. they're, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, they have a combined 20 college football playoff appearances, and only, I think, 3 or 4 other schools have one. So,
yeah, I don't know that there's a way to immediately combat the top heaviness of college football, and I don't think the top heaviness of college football is necessarily bad. You've got to have elite teams. Even the FCS side, which has a 24 team playoff, still has its elite powerhouses, but it still produces a fun playoff scenario regardless. So I mean, there's different avenues. I think I don't know that there's a perfect way to balance it all out, but I think that these improvements are nothing but an effort from the top folks in the college football world to try to put a great product on the field and not in any way to try to diminish it. But in that same breath, Mark Emmert wants a decision made final by July 1st for the name, image, and likeness decision, to try to give these players an opportunity to be compensated for something that I think by human right they own, which is their face, their name, and the use of which. What do you think this name, image, and likeness is gonna impact college football, especially with consideration to what the advantage is here at Alabama, the forethought of Greg Byrne and Nick Saban to get out ahead of this and let their players, their athletes here in Tuscaloosa know what this is going to mean for them when these rules do finally come to fruition.
Jacob, I think it's absolutely awesome that we're in the day and age where, players are about to break down the door and break through on July 1st in the state of Alabama, where it's like, hey, you want to be a spokesperson for a sponsor, you want to be on a car dealership ad, you want to do this, you can do that, right? I'm so fired up about that guys can begin to market themselves and really put themselves on their best foot forward in a sense, right? Because those connections you build now and the opportunities they could get now could help them better in life, right? And that's what Nick Saban preaches his entire program about. It's like, you better have a plan after football. And this helps that, right? It's why it's called the advantage. And I think it's absolutely awesome. What baffles me is how Mark Emmert, that clown, got extended till 2025. It baffles me,
that's
man.
the best thing you've said in our 22 minutes.
It actually baffles me how he got extended to 2025. And I just think the NCAA should bite the bullet on this, right? It's because, they're reaching for whatever power they think they have.
Right. And
in actuality, they have zero power. And I just think, man, like, I just go back to this. I go back to, when I was in school at UA, it's like, man, like if I was in engineering or if I was an architect, and I'm just this phenom, right? I can go out and the company can hire me to do some work while I'm still in school and I can get paid for that. Well, isn't Will Anderson a phenom? Isn't Malachi Moore a phenom? Shouldn't they be able to make some money too if another student can do it? So I think it's well deserved, and I think it's about time. My only concern is does it cause any strife? Because we don't know that 100% yet. Is there going to be division in the locker room between the guys who are getting sponsorships and ad deals and all this and their money and the guys who aren't? What I think it will do, I think it breeds competition. I think, and I love that, man. It's like, hey, you want to go out, you want to make your money? Well, be the best you can possibly be. And I think there's some guys who are going to take that and they're going to, take their money. I mean, they're going to take their ball and they're going to leave, right? They're going to transfer. They got the transfer rule now to do that. But I think also too, I just think there's going to be some division and some strife over this in the locker room. And for Alabama's sake, Nick Saban does a great job of handling situations like this, right? He's a great manager of people, so I have no doubt that he can handle that. But I'm kind of curious to see what the backlash of it is, right? Because it does sound good, and I think it's going to be great for the sport. I don't know if you looked at it, Jacob, but the Georgia bill that just passed is very interesting to me. It's very interesting to me that the school is going to pool the money, right? And I think they can take over 75% of it and dish it out. That's interesting to me. Maybe if there's a balance of that and then players getting their money, like, because, if you take Georgia, for example, JT Daniels, who, very well could be the best quarterback in the SEC this next year, his money, it's going to, whatever he makes is going to go to the offensive lineman, right? The right guard. So that's interesting to me. Maybe there's a balance between that and getting your money on the side. I don't know what the exact answer is, but I think we're moving in the right direction, and it's a long time coming for sure.
I tell you what, I know Georgia's got an extremely conservative governor, and that is the most socialist bill I've seen. I think Bernie Sanders would blush at that thing. I can't get behind that one at all. Maybe 10%, maybe. But regardless, I'm interested to see how it goes. I don't think we're gonna have too much in the way of strife. There's so many avenues for these guys. I mean, you're a backup wide receiver. Get famous on TikTok. You've got opportunities now. Go open a YouTube channel and monetize it. And you've got opportunities there. I think there's plenty of chances for these guys to try to combat that. And I think if you're on a good team anyway, you try to avoid those kind of situations. We're talking to Tyler Martin of Bama Central. Tyler, before I let you go, just an update on recruiting. I do want you to talk a little bit about the basketball phenom, JD Davison, and what he pulled off at the Iverson Classic, but also with Crimson Tide recruiting as far as the 2022 class and the way it's coming along.
Yeah, let's start with JD, man. I mean, I've had the opportunity to see JD in person multiple times. I've obviously interviewed his coach a few times, interviewed him, and gotten. This is when he was a junior, really, when I first met JD. And what Alabama fans need ready for, I mean, he's a great kid first and foremost, but his athletic talent and just ability. His coach told me one time he's like a Russell Westbrook. And in the sense of that, he gets downhill so quick. He's going hard every second. He can tear down the rim. So think about this, right? Think about how finesse Javon Quinterly is at the rim and the jelly fam and the layups and all that and how nice that looks, right? Well, guess what? J.D. Davison, when he's coming down that lane, he is going to murder that rim. He's going to murder the defender in front of him. That's his mindset. He's a killer, right? I mean, that's what his mentality is. He can defend with the best of them. He can pass a little bit too. He can just do it all, right? I mean, Russell Westbrook, outside of really the three-point shot, can do it all too. And that's, I think, a great comparison to his game. And JD, man, he's such a special kid. And I think Alabama fans are really, really blessed to be able to watch him for the one season he's going to play college basketball. And, winning the slam dunk contest over some big names at the Iverson Classic. And then he dropped 18 points, which was, I think, third most in the game. And people got to realize is that there was no McDonald's All-American game this year. The Iverson Classic really kind of took its place. So you had guys like Hunter Salas, who's going to Gonzaga, who's arguably maybe the third or fourth best player in the country in this class. Chet Holmgren, the big 7-foot walking breadstick, I call him. He's going to Gonzaga. He had a great game. He's a monster. That's who the guys J.D. Davison was playing against. Paulo Blanchero, the guy going to Duke, who's potentially going to be a top 5 pick in the 2022 NBA draft. So JD had the opportunity to play with some great special players this past weekend, and he rose to the top, and he's going to be a perfect fit in Nate's offense because it's just attack you, get downhill, get to the basket, or kick it out and hit a three. So he's a perfect fit. And then kind of switching over to football, this 2022 class right now, let's see, the last commitment we had was Jaheim Otis, a big defensive lineman from the state of Mississippi. He's 6'6", 300 plus pounds. He really rose to fame throughout 8th grade when Alabama first offered him then. And there's kind of been a little bit of pause in some decisions because June 1st, like July 1st is so important for that name, image, likeness, June 1st is as important on the recruiting trail because guess what? Official visits are back. The NCAA, Mark Emmert, I forgive you now. You actually did something right. You canceled the dead period, and guys are able to get on campus. Alabama is going to have a plethora of visitors coming in, big-time visitors, right? I think of a Walter Nolan, a big defensive lineman. I think of some receivers who are in this class. Alabama's going to need some playmakers in this 2022 class, to maybe replace a John Mechie, guys like that. So June is going to be a really, really busy month for recruiting because Alabama's going to have a lot of guys camping with them. There's going to be some 2023 guys taking some unofficial visits. So it's going to be good to see the recruiting get back to normalcy. But, yeah, this 2022 class, it's going to be another special one, I think. And the best thing about it, in my opinion, and hopefully you and Carrie will do another Friday Night Lights show so I can call and talk to you about these guys, but the in-state talent that Alabama has in 2022, it's the best I've seen in years. You've got Jeremiah Alexander, who was a once-time Alabama commit, decommitted in October. Alabama's still heavily in the mix. They're in a fight with Georgia right now for him. LSU might be running third in that race. You've got just skill. You got playmakers all over the field. There's a corner from Oxford who's unbelievable. Traquan Fagans. He's a big time guy. He's 6'2". So this state has a bunch of talent right now, and Alabama, like they do most years, and this is a year where they got to take advantage of a first-year head coach and Brian Harsin at Auburn, and they've really got to own this state, and I think they'll do that. But this year, I mean, the in-state talent's a lot, but Alabama, I mean, it's kind of slow right now in terms of the number of commitments. I think they're sitting at 6 right now. But yeah, I mean, Robert Woodard, an inside linebacker from Mobile, he's a beast. He's in this class already too. But yeah, it's just, I mean, the in-state talent's incredible. But Alabama once again looks like they're going to dominate this state, and it's really just getting going. But June 1st, everybody, just watch out for that date, because once Alabama gets guys on campus, we all know then the commitments start rolling in once they get on campus and they see the University of Alabama.
That's Tyler Martin at Steven Tyler _15. Man, you brought it tonight. We would greatly appreciate it. Go make sure you give Tyler a follow on the Twitter account. Tyler, man, take it easy. Have a great night.
Yeah, you too, Jacob. Stay safe, man.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. Tyler Martin joining us here on a Monday night. We'll take our last break of the night before we close her down. I'm Jacob Harrison. This is Off the Edge, Tide 100.9, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. We're shutting her down on a Monday night. Big thanks to AJ Spur. Big thanks to Tyler Martin. Big thanks to Tommy Paradise for producing the show. We've had a lot of fun. If you missed any of our conversation tonight, be sure to check it out on the Podcast Center. I'll tweet those out tomorrow as well, so stay tuned to the social medias. Give us a follow at Off the Edge 109 on all the social medias. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are the best places to go. They're the only places to go. Like, share, and subscribe there, and hang out with the channel. Be sure to join us in the comment section every single show, Mondays and Fridays from 7 to 9. No show Friday because of baseball again, but once baseball's out of the way, we'll return to Fridays again. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thanks to Alabama Vintage. Until next time, until next Monday, Saturday, 8 to 11, the Saturday Showdown. I'll join Bryant Horn and James Ludeman. Thanks for hanging out with us. Have a good night and roll Tide.
7 to 9 p.m. on Tide 100.9 and the Tide 100.9 app.